Hear from Judah that the impeachment that we propose is never to actually kick Donald Trump out, right? We understand that impeachment is a long process, right? That's why the motion states the attempt for impeachment, right? We understand that impeachment process will probably end by April or May 2020 because that's when the election period starts, right? So we never proposed to you that we want to kick Donald Trump out, right? We told you that the process of impeachment, at its best case scenario, tarnishes Trump's legacy forever, sets a standard for other Republican candidates, and ensures that this kind of behavior does not happen. In the worst case scenario, in which it is not passed and the charges are dropped, then it at least reminds the American voters of the crimes that Donald Trump has done throughout his presidency, right? Because as humans, we have a limited memory, right? We're not able to remember things over 2 or 3 years ago, right? But exactly, in the context in which it is election year in America, in which it's 2020, we think it's very important to remind people of the crime that Donald Trump has done throughout his tenure as president, right? What I'm going to do to you is I'm going to first point out why is it that we're going to give you responses to tell to you why is it that the solution that from opening government can never really work and it's never clear how it's going to work. But number two, I'm going to point out that impeachment is a very possible solution, but even if it doesn't work, we're more than happy to still pursue it because we still believe it brings more harm than good, right? Now let's respond to the opening government first. So the solution that opening government wants to bring is to tell to us that we need to propose objective perspectives from CNN and BBC. The interesting thing here is that they say it as if we don't do it already, right? And as if CNN and BBC don't already put in the news about Donald Trump's crimes, right? We think that that's a trend that's already happened throughout the past 4 years, right? But I think the second thing, the interesting thing that they do is that they try to say on how Donald Trump has a very unique perspective, right? Donald Trump and his followers always call out any kind of attack against Donald Trump as fake news, right? We think that that is going to happen even more if your only attack is literally through the news, right? If your only attack is through the news, then it's very evident that they're going to call you fake news all the time, right? This means that the solution that they propose on their side of the house can also not work, right? Because then Donald Trump would also equally call you out for saying fake news, right? Why is it that our solution escapes from that kind of calling out as fake news, right? Because I think you have to notice here that the solution of impeachment is inherently different with any other kind of pursuit, right? Notice that impeachment is not the first thing that Democrats have tried to do to undermine Trump, right? We've done multiple kinds of things. We've proposed to the Supreme Court to drop the Muslim ban, right? We've proposed to the society Ilhan Omar and the Fab Four have tried to say that Trump is an illegitimate leader, right? But all of these things are problematic because they're not official charges, right? Because Donald Trump can very easily say that these are not official charges, right? If you want to go through the media, we think that's better on our side of the house. Because what's going to happen in the process of impeachment, right? Let's try to understand the process of impeachment, right? It's not simply that, oh, you do something bad and that's it, right? No, you have multiple Congress hearings, right? You have multiple Congress hearings discussing the crimes of Trump, right? The benefits are twofold, right? Number one is that obviously you discuss these kind of bad harms and that reminds the American citizens of the harms itself. But number two, notice that Congress hearings are often bipartisan, right? Meaning that it's covered by New York Times, but also by the Breitbart and all the other kinds of media, right? So exactly when you have these Congress hearings and these are accessed by not only the Democratic voters, but also the Republican and gray area voters, that's exactly when you're going to be able to create a bigger impact that you want on your side of the house, and media becomes much more objectively better on our side of the house, because most likely the Congress hearings are not only the subject matter of the left-leaning publications, but also the right-leaning publications as well, right? So that's why on our side of the house, we think that's exactly going to be better. It's exactly going to be better because we think that media on our side of the house has now a big focus on those Congress hearings, right? But this then leads to the second point, which is then the question, look, there's radical policies from the Democratic candidates, and therefore we think that that's going to be bad because we're not calling out those policies, we're instead discussing about the impeachment, right? Number one, this is just simply untrue, right? We think that even if the New York Times covers Bernie Sanders' support for the impeachment, there is enough call out of the radical policies, right? Multiple publications have called out Andrew Yang's policies of universal basic income as unrealistic, right? Multiple people have called out Warren's policies of breaking up big tech companies as unrealistic, right? So the calling out is already happening regardless, right? But let's go to the best case. Even if right now we have to stop, why is that entirely fine, right? Because we think that those kinds of calling out of policies will not necessarily become that big of a relevancy until the election period starts, right? We think it's entirely fine for a period of time we discuss the impeachment, right? Because number one, the media cycle is so fast that it's probably going to go away soon and we're going to talk about the policies again. But number two, this is an important issue to talk right now, and we think that any other kind of policy can play second fiddle to this policy because impeachment is the most important issue of the hour, right? So in the terms of discussion, we think it's entirely fine if we have to push back Warren and the to later discussion because we're going to discuss them later anyway, right? Before I continue on, yes.
Impeachment is something that only accessible to be done by the political elite. How does that face with anti-establishment supporters of Donald Trump?
Number one, again, notice that it's going to happen in the process of Congress hearing, right? Of course, you're not going to be able to enter into Congress, right? But notice that the process of Congress hearings are accessible, even to anti-establishment supporters, right? Like, for example, just look at the Mark Zuckerberg videos in the Congress hearing and how that can go viral and be accessible to everyone, right? So if your only problem is accessibility, right, then you have to talk about when on your side of the house you only discuss things through CNN and BBC, how is that accessible to the anti-establishment supporters, right? You haven't responded to the bipartisan Congress hearings that are going to happen on our side of the house, right? But now let's continue on to the third response, right? They also want to tell you how about they don't want the election to be solely based on nationalistic values, right? We agree that we don't want that to happen, right? And we think the current trend of the election has shown to be otherwise. Exactly when you see multiple debates, exactly when you see people like Julian Castro discuss policies with Cory Booker on national TV, we think exactly this is a policy-based election, right? And so therefore, why is impeachment a good idea? Understanding that it is a policy-based election, right? Remember back, so number one, we think that the impeachment could work on our side of the house, right? Because the Ukraine issue is only the first issue out of many issues, right? There have been multitudes of issues that can be discussed and can be reasoned to be impeached, right? You have the wall, you have the Muslim ban, right? You have Russia, you have the Mueller report, right? So there are multiple reasons on why to impeach Trump, right? But we've already said on why we're willing to take the worst case scenario. And in the worst case scenario in which we are not able to do that, then what we're willing to do is, what the most important thing to happen is that the impeachment process is still done, right? In order to reveal all the policies Trump has done, in order to reveal that the Trump government has experienced multiple changes of Secretary of State, of the Speaker of the House or anything like that. And so, why does that matter? Because when we point out to people that Trump has done very bad policies throughout his tenure as president, and it is a policy-based election, we think that exactly cements the Democrats' position in the election, right? Sure, we all think that the Democrats are going to win the election, right? But that's what we thought in 2016. In order to really guarantee that win, we need to ensure that we do anything we can as the Democrat Party to prove our power, to prove that we are a good check and balance to the Republicans, and to also ensure that we've shown the policies of Trump to be bad, right? Showing the impeachment process is not only good for the society, but it's also good for all political candidates in order to ensure a better America, and in order to ensure that the society is more than happy to oppose.